The Standing Committee on the Auditor-General has noted that the cases referred by the Auditor-General of South Africa to law enforcement agencies indicate systemic procurement weaknesses that have exposed the state to fraud, corruption and theft, resulting in the failure of service delivery. Now, the committee received a briefing from the Hawks and the SIU on cases of material irregularities. And on the line to us now is SIU spokesperson, Mr. Kaizer Kganyago. Mr. Kganyago, thanks for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina, and good morning to your viewers.
So for those who may not be appraised, in terms of what was raised, what did the SIU raise as some of the concerns with the Standing Committee?
Yes, what we have done is we've got a memorandum that we've signed as a result of the Audit Act, where with the Auditor-General Act, where it is clear that when they find irregularities when they are doing their audit, then they must refer it to either the Hawks or ourselves. Therefore, what we have then presented to the Portfolio Committee is all the investigations that were sent our way, which were about 19 of them, and then 3 of them were investigated through proclamations that were already there, and then 9 of them had new proclamations. And in all of them, it was very clear that there are irregularities that are in the main, where people are not just following procurement processes that are there. And majority of them were in the municipalities, and they were also in CITA and in the National Treasury with the IFMS program that was there. All of those things were presented to the Portfolio Committee, the Standing Committee on the Auditor-General when we were there.
So, Mr. Kganyago, those 9 cases that you referred to that have already resulted in presidential proclamations, how far are your investigations into those?
Yeah, some of them we are still investigating, but in most, like the one that of the IFMS with the Treasury, the investigation is very at an advanced stage. We've already made referrals, and you have seen that as a result of what we have done, there was a new amendment that was done now this year to include DPSA, because in the previous one it was only National Treasury that was involved. Therefore, when we saw that discrepancy, we went back to the President and it was proclaimed again. Therefore, we have done a lot of work. Therefore, we don't want the impression created that the investigation was about the SIU having irregularities, because that is not what it was about. It was us indicating those irregularities, and we are very clear as the SIU, we want to do the best. As we speak to you now, we have got an audit that is clear, that indicates that we have done everything that we're supposed to do in a lawful manner. But from our side, we are very clear that there will be consequence management around all of those that are before the Portfolio Committee that we presented, because we give quarterly briefings or reports to the Auditor-General about how far we are around all of those.
The committee, Mr. Kganyago, did raise concern about how long certain investigations are taking. So from your perspective, why do the SIU cases sometimes drag on for months on end, for years for that matter, and what is being done to fast track them?
Yes, that has been a concern, but I don't think it's a concern anymore, because the head of the SIU, when he started a few years ago, that was the focus, to say, let us do this investigation as quickly as possible. And that is why, with us, it is very important, even if a proclamation takes maybe a year or so, we are very clear that there must be reports that are done in between to indicate how far we are, because in some instances you might find that it is things that are beyond our control. Sometimes when we get to the people that we need to interview, they get sick and they try and avoid, and some of them take us to court to try and extend the time, trying to make sure that ultimately they don't get to account. But we still follow up, but we do interim reports in between. That's the first thing. But the second thing, in the stages of the investigation where we find that there are clear outcomes, we deal with those things. We refer in between. We don't wait for the end of the investigation for us to refer the matters. And that is why all our referrals and the matters that go to the tribunals are done even before the investigation is finalized.
And I guess for the public, Mr. Kganyago, it's about tangible results beyond the investigations. People want to know how many cases have actually led to arrests, how many cases have led to recoveries of funds, how much, the blacklisting of suppliers or disciplinary action against implicated officials. This is what people want to know. They want to know, in terms of the reassurances that you give to communities. If you take Majabeng, for example, that's been in the news for so many wrong reasons, along with other municipalities. How do you assure these communities that this is not just about exposing the corruption, but actually coming through with tangible results?
Yeah, we can clearly assure them, Sakina, and say that you would have seen in the way that we communicate our things. We communicate when the investigation starts, and we indicate to people that this is what we are going to find. And then later on, when the outcomes, we come out. When the outcome from the special tribunal, we come out and say, this is what we have recovered. And that is why we're able, in the previous financial year, to come up and say we have recovered amounts in the excess of over 8 billion rand. Because we are able to then quantify all of those that we have done, and we assure the public that we'll continue to do that. In as far as other referrals, we also mention when we do presentation to say these are the number of referrals we have done through the institutions for disciplinary, and these are the numbers that we have done for prosecution, and therefore those are out of our hands. We just follow them up with the help of the President's office, where we've got a mechanism to monitor all those referrals that we've done. But the one that we've got control over is the recovery of fund, and we do it and we give that account to the public as and when it happens.
And with regard to your work with other agencies like the Hawks, like the NPA, to ensure that these findings lead to real prosecutions and not just reports or recovering the money, which is, of course, a very important aspect, but that there are actual real consequences through prosecutions.
Yes, we work with them. We've got a fusion center where we all meet and really look at what each one of us is doing. But we also have to then have a separation of duties, because when we send these matters to the NPA, for example, we then send it with the evidence that we are using ourselves when we go and recover the money. Therefore, it is up to them to look at the evidence. If they need more evidence, then they have to go to the Hawks and make sure that the further investigations are done. Therefore, that is not necessarily within our control, but we are there. Our investigators are always available to serve as witnesses in the cases and in the disciplinary cases that happen.
And just finally, Mr. Kganyago, do you find that in the main, a lot of these cases point to actual weak procurement and supply chain processes?
Yes, we find that because almost 90% of the investigations that we do are about procurement. Therefore, we find that there is weak procurement processes. That is why at the end of each investigation, we don't just say we have investigated. We then do what we call systemic recommendations, where we are able to say to each and every institution that we investigate, these are the loopholes. If you can close here and close there, we can find that. But in other instances, you find that the procurement processes are here. There are no irregularities, the problem there. The problem is people who deliberately go against the procurement process. Well, for an example, they just push everything to, at the time when 500,000 was the maximum for 3 quotations, they just push every quotation to just below 500,000 and use the 3-code system to award those and give it to friends and whatever. And that is not a problem of the procurement system. It is a problem of people who are greedy, who just want to do wrong things to benefit themselves and their families.
And finally, when it comes to arrest, what is the greatest hindrance that you face as the SIU?
The greatest risk?
Hindrance?
No, in terms of, because we don't do arrests as the SIU, therefore we won't have a hindrance on as far as that is concerned. But what we are saying is the whole of society approach is very important. We want the public to understand that for us as the SIU and all other law enforcement agencies to fight corruption, there must be a whole of society approach where the public gets involved. They mustn't just leave it to the institution. They must get involved, report these matters as and when they see them, and therefore we will be able to achieve what we want to achieve as a country to fight corruption.
Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, SIU spokesperson, Mr. Kaizer Kganyago.